welcome to the March 17th, 2026 Planning Commission meeting. Call this meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Phil. Here. Sharon.
Here.
Joe.
Here.
Danielle.
Here.
Paul. Here. Betty Ann.
Here.
Joyce is absent and Zeb is absent. All right, moving on. Approval of the minutes for March 3rd. Or changes to the minutes.
Make the motion approved.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Paul. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on, presentation of new applications. Annex 2601 Church Street. This is Kelly.
This is request from Nick Peters, agent, ASLA, True Design Studio, to annex approximately 1.37 acres and to rezone from Horry County Highway Commercial to MP Medical Professional Zoning District. Here's a location map of the parcel, as well as a GIS overview. In between Church Street and Highway 17. The current zoning shown as Horry County Highway Commercial, with the proposed zoning as MP Medical Professional. And I will say, in reviewing this application, staff noticed the parcel needs to be congruent with the surrounding zone, and the applicant has been made aware that MP must be changed to HC1, so it's not spot zoning. Happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also in the room. Should be. Maybe.
Questions for staff? Off to the applicant.
Yeah, that was a mistake on our part when filling out the application. We didn't realize that there was highway commercial on both sides of the property, so we're fine with starting that MD zoning that we put on the application, highway commercial.
Good. How do we change for the next meeting? Good. Thank you.
That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Annex 2602 Ocala and Edge Street, also Kelly.
Yes, this is request from David Schwerd, agent Diamond Shores LLC, to annex 4 parcels ranging from 85,270 square feet to 32,846 square feet and to rezone from Horry County General Residential to Mixed Use Medium Density Zoning District. A location map in between Ocala and Robert Grisham. Edge Street goes right in the middle. GIS overview. The current zoning as Horry County General Residential, with the proposed zoning as mixed use medium density. Happy to answer any questions.
Remind me what's included in mixed use? What can be used for? Anything?
Most,
And it's backed up to the ballpark too.
correct, that
Yes, it
E2 that
is.
you see is the parking lot for the ball stadium.
Yeah.
Plan is for townhomes, they're correct?
Which falls in line with what the county's general residential requirements were. General residential is no longer a permitted zone in the county. That's an old archaic zoning, but it allowed for apartments and condos. So the townhome development there would fit in with what previously was planned for that property as part of the county.
And everything else around that other than that one, that Pelican Harbor's in you and.
Those are all PUDs, so
Yeah.
it touches the MUM on Grissom.
Any more questions for staff? Questions for the applicant?
Good afternoon, James Steele, Diamond Shores. We're basically looking just to match the zoning, basically filling the door and hole there. So, pretty much it. So, any questions I can answer?
Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks. All right, moving on, pre-fin 2605, Living Dunes Phase 4, Taisha.
This is a request from J. Cameron Parker, DRJ LLC, to subdivide approximately 2.36 acres zoned Grand Dunes PUD near San Laffer Way into 8 lots ranging from 21,321 square feet to 1,960.28 square feet with 2 new streets. Highlighted in blue is the property into consideration. Here we have the aerial view. Here is the zoning map showing its location in the Grand Dunes PUD. Here is the plat showing the 8 lots. 4 of them will be the buildable and then the rest will be the common area. Here you can see the more detailed. And then this is the tree survey. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer, and then the applicant's in the audience.
The parking that they have for units, does that fit in the PUD plan, or is it fitting the city's parking requirement?
That, I believe that could be a good question for the applicant. It was a subdivision based on what they are planning on designing.
Any other questions for staff? Call from the applicant. Mr. Parker.
Ken Parker with DRG. I'll give you a quick overview. This is the final piece of the Living Dunes puzzle. Phase 4, we're proposing 4 buildings, 5 units each, 20 total units. Each of these buildings has a 2-car garage, and then you have 18 street parking spaces. This is consistent with the Living Dunes or the Living Dunes master plan, which is part of the Grand Dunes PUD, consistent within the density provided in the master plan. Also, I guess I'll point your attention to the perimeter of this will be surrounded by the Grand Dunes wall, and then the interior will just be a landscape courtyard within that parking court, motor court.
And this is going to be like previous Living Dunes. This is kind of preliminary, and then we're going to come back and drop the lines when they're built.
Yes, that's why you see 4 blocks here. They'll come back once the center walls are constructed, and we'll see you guys again multiple times as each of these buildings get built.
So, Cameron, y'all gonna put a wall along 17 too?
Yes, along Sand Oak Avenue and along 17 behind the billboard and along the frontage outside of the sight line.
So will it be kind of consistent with what's around that pond already, or?
It'll be consistent with the Living Dunes wall. There's their style of wall is a little bit different.
The one that kind of runs along Brandon's Boulevard?
Yeah, that on their side it's a little bit of like a brick and tabby, but it will be that wall.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Sorry, I missed the parking thing, I guess, at 65.
You're good.
Yeah, that's good.
You happy with that answer?
Thank you. No, yeah.
Okay, good.
I just, when you saw the building, it didn't say anything about parking, so I'm just making sure. I figured you had it covered.
No problem.
Okay. Moving on. Text 2601, PFU's amendment, Mr. Softy, Cameron.
So this is a request by Trifecta Recreation LLC, Mr. Softy of Horry County, to amend section 1314A of the City of Myrtle Beach Code of Ordinances to allow ice cream trailers and similar dessert-focused units to operate as permanent food units on private property without the requirement of affiliation with a brick-and-mortar restaurant, and to allow PFUs in the amusement zoning district. The initial requested text amendment was to amend 1314A, again to allow ice cream trailers and similar dessert-focused units to operate as permanent food units on private property without the requirement of affiliation with brick and mortar. To start with here, I wanted to pull in the 2 definitions for what we have in our code book currently under MFU's mobile food units and permanent food units. Those are up on the screen in front of you here. An MFU is a self-contained vehicle-mounted food service unit as approved by DHEC, which is used for either the preparation or the sale of food products or both. Please note here, number 1, food trailer, an enclosed, attached, or detached trailer that is equipped with facilities for preparing, cooking, and/or selling various types of food products. Down below, you'll notice the definition of permanent food unit, which is a food trailer or food truck which is stationary and permanently located on a parcel as part of the on-site restaurant business in association with a city-approved commercial site plan. The applicant proposed amendment language, which reads ice cream trailers, frozen dessert vendors, and similar specialty dessert units may be permitted to operate as a PFU when located on private property with written authorization from the property owner and approval through the city's site review process. These units shall comply with all applicable SC DHEC food safety regulations and city health, safety, and operational standards. And continued, such units shall not be required to maintain an affiliation with a brick and mortar restaurant when the food preparation and service operations are limited to prepackaged or on-site dispensed frozen dessert products. Just some notes for consideration here. Currently, the City of Myrtle Beach governs all PFUs in conjunction with the ICC building code, which includes things like strappings, foundations, and bathrooms. A permanent food unit we view the same as a structure currently with the language that we have. It is no different than a structure. Second, Myrtle Beach has a protected zone along the Ocean Boulevard area. The defined protected zone restricts soliciting and deems improper use of private property as a public nuisance. And then third, just point for consideration is that we are currently ongoing a zoning rewrite, and the planning staff has already submitted to Kimley Horn to review best practices for both food trucks and food truck parks as part of the ongoing zoning rewrite process. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you all may have. This is workshop, and the applicant is in the audience.
Cameron, permanent food units, do we have an example of any of that in Myrtle Beach right now?
We currently have one. It is at, was it 221 Shine, the raw bar up in the Market Common area on Shine Avenue.
And what is that affiliated with?
The Shine Barn.
Okay,
So there's a restaurant on site, and out back they have a converted trailer that is plumbed into the ground, electriced into the ground, concreted in, that serves beer out of the back of that. So it's
Okay.
a permanent structure out back, but it's a converted trailer.
Okay, does that, is, when somebody wants to put a permanent food unit, on the approved site plan, does that go to, Community Appearance Board?
Yes.
So they have to approve how the truck looks and all that, and then if the truck becomes in disrepair, it needs to be painted or whatever, it goes through the same process of code enforcement that
Correct.
a building would.
Correct.
Okay.
We view these exactly as a structure.
So when you have to have a bathroom and all that kind of stuff for Mr. Softy or anybody else, they would have to have an agreement with the property owner to be able to use for their customers to use their bathrooms, or how does that work?
That is, to my understanding, somewhat of a gray area. The code, the building code states that PFU should have a bathroom of its own
Which obviously doesn't happen.
with a
right?
trailer.
And Zeb, your line of questioning is one reason, the third point that Cameron made on his list of things is that we've already been in discussions with Kimley Horn in regard to our zoning rewrite, to looking at our food truck ordinance. We were looking at it more along the lines of the permanent food courts and things along those lines. That is why I strongly feel that this needs to be a part of the zoning rewrite and not a freestanding approach right now. But those are all very good questions that you asked that lead to that point of, that's why we want to be a part of the, I mean, those are very good questions that required, in all honesty, dig into answers. There's a lot of I's and T's to cross in
Yeah,
regard to
I
this.
mean, that's the issue, the concern I have is that all that needs to be addressed and worked out, so.
I will make sure within the staff report that is addressed.
Okay. And I think, the Community Appearance Board needs to be involved with it and everything. It needs to be treated just like an accessory building would be treated.
Correct. Now, if they came in here today and wanted to build a little 10 by 15 building on that piece of property, they wouldn't even be coming in here before y'all today. Okay, 'cause we can just handle that with the existing code as written in regard to all of that.
Yes, sir.
When you read the general requirements that's in the zoning, it said mobile food units with the exception of ice cream trucks. What was the thought behind that when it was written that way?
Ice cream trucks are generally prepackaged things, so that is different than a mobile food truck which pulls up and prepares the food in front of you, so that's why that carve out exists like that.
Any other questions for staff? Applicant, I have a question. I guess this kind of falls in line with what Ken was saying. How do you make a mobile food unit permanent?
So we've already applied with Santa Cooper to check out the pole and existing pole and electric that's there. That would be at our expense to bring downtown to that area, and we've priced that out with Santa Cooper already, so that would make it more permanent. We've also worked with the owner of Beach House Riptides upon their request to do this for them and be able to use their water system.
What if it's a trailer on wheels that you just unplug the electric and roll? It's not a permanent structure.
Right, no, it's not. It does have jacks, it wouldn't be on the wheels, and everything would be covered as if you see, would be like a building, but not a building, but it is something that we looked at, to your point, to look into brick and mortar if this ends up working out.
So would this be on the ground around Riptides?
In the 1202 North Ocean Boulevard at Beach House parking lot.
Okay,
There's a pole right in the
so I mean for flood regulations, all that kind of stuff, it'd be movable, I guess?
Correct.
So it's not really a permanent
Correct.
fixture.
Correct.
So I mean, really kind of what we need to be looking at is some way to temporarily anchor a food truck in a location, which I thought we had something already in that respect.
I mean, you go back to what Cameron just described. You know, so like those are anchored where they don't have to be moved when the storm comes. They couldn't be moved. If the ones that Cameron made reference to out at Shine Restaurant, if they got moved because the storm was coming, again, that's gonna be the equivalent to probably picking up a building and moving. I doubt very seriously you're gonna roll that truck out of there, because I doubt the thing will even start.
So what we're looking at is, I think right now, mobile food trucks can't stay at one place for too long.
Correct.
So what the applicant is asking for is the ability to locate at one place indefinitely.
Yes.
A food truck indefinitely in a particular location.
Based on the added, or the question asked to us, I guess several of the restaurants downtown would rather sell dinners and move the dessert part of it out of the building so they can turn the tables over. So when we were asked, we thought that would be a great collaboration with that restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes some sense. I think there's some hurdles that need to be kind of addressed.
I think a good example, for those of y'all that have ever been around down toward the inlet, I think it's called Zesties now. It used to be called Twisties. And it was about a little 12 by 15 building, but it was a building, and all they served was ice cream. All they had was picnic tables out in the yard, and it's exactly what she said. People went and had their dinner at the restaurants, and then to get through with the dinner, they go across the street and they get some ice cream. Some of them might just go there for some ice cream. But again, that's out of a permanent structured building in there. So, I mean, I don't disagree with the concept or the idea. Our biggest concern is just the implementation and how we're going to handle the next one, which is why I said it needs a deep dive, and the deep dive comes to a zoning rewrite approach.
And how do you deal with the owner-operators down there that have already made the investment into a permanent structure that are operating within a couple hundred feet of where this proposed location is?
I'd probably ask them to seek that answer from someone else besides me.
So I did get to talk with a few of the owners down there as well, and they would alleviate a lot of their lines.
I'm talking
as
about-
far as we are concerned.
I'm talking about other ice cream
Yes, like
shops.
Chris Walker, Bill Prescott, the same thing, because they both offer ice cream within walking distance of where we're at.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I mean, one of the things I think we need to be concerned about is, you know, you see in some areas where somebody just has a vacant lot and they put a food truck on it, you know, indefinitely. And, you know, I see what the applicant is saying. I mean, you know, this, what she's proposing could be complementary to an existing brick and mortar restaurant. But I'm not sure if we want to open the door for just any lot owner to just put a food truck on their lot, you know, indefinitely, just, you know, to get around the cost of investing
Into the city.
into the city, yeah.
So our purpose is to invest in a brick and mortar in the next year. Obviously, kind of pilot for us, and not something that you'd be interested in doing as a pilot. And being asked the question by, you know, Riptides to alleviate that, we said, you know, sure, it's not something that I'd like to leave there indefinitely. We have pre-proposed a lease that would include just certain months of the year, and it would be gone. And then at that point, either build a small building or go to Mr. Softy standards and do a larger brick and mortar down at the boulevard, you know, based on approval.
So I think maybe what we're probably getting at here is that we need to kind of work through this issue a little bit. I don't think we can give you what you're looking for right away. But I think, I mean, I appreciate you bringing this to us, and let's see if we can work out a way to accommodate what you're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Moving on, I am going to recuse myself from the next two agenda items based on a conflict of interest with the agent and hand it over to Mr. Stahl.
Back a little bit. We'll move forward with text 2601. Mr. Softy, we'll have the planning.
2602.
I meant text 2602, 27th Avenue.
This is our-
Go ahead.
Thank you. This is a request from Robert S. Guyton to create a planned unit development between 26th Avenue North and 27th Avenue North, known as the 27th Avenue North Hotel PUD. Here's the current 26th Avenue North PUD. We are between Withers, 27th Avenue. Here's our aerial view. These four properties are the proposed 27th Avenue PUD. You can see lot number 9, that is a piece of property that will be acquired whenever the PUD is created and purchased from the city. It is approximately 2.31 acres with a minimum lot requirement of 2,000 square feet and a max building height of 175 feet and a 90% max building coverage. It will be the 5 lots, 400 units. Here are the third row, second row, and oceanfront improvements. And the open space plan, green space. And then again, here are the improvements. We have a 30-foot alley, a 20-foot alley, 10-foot sidewalks, and then maintaining a 20-foot drive aisle and pedestrian improvement installations across the whole PUD. Here are the building renderings. And at the corner, you can see the parking regulations. We have 1 space per 1-bedroom unit, 1.5 spaces for 2 bedrooms, and then for each additional bedroom, it will be a 0.5 space. And then here are the hotel renderings. And that is all. And I believe the applicant is in the audience. Any questions?
How do the parking requirements, the proposed parking requirements for this PUD, how do they compare to what would otherwise be required for this type of structure if it was not in a PUD?
Well, these are very consistent with oceanfront PUDs, the 1 per 1, 1.5 per 2. That is standard in almost all of our oceanfront PUDs at this point. MUH down in that area, I believe, Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, it also impacts building height is one of the things that impacts parking requirements, but is it a half count reduction? Or is that only MUM?
In the MUM, you can, but it only doesn't apply to long-term or short-term. Yeah, the bedroom, it's based off bedroom count, you can run almost with current code.
So I guess my question is, by granting a PUD, what is the applicant getting that it could not otherwise get under the current zoning if it was not a PUD?
The setbacks?
Primary setbacks?
Yep.
So density would otherwise, height would otherwise be the same,
So currently these pieces of property they were the old C-Dip Hotel, which was slated through phase 5 of the, you'll see this in the next presentation, but as part of the 26th Avenue North PUD, the C-Dip was slated to redevelop and actually be a 238-foot tall hotel. So they're actually decreasing their height, but going a bit wider with their building to still get their room counts in. So we're seeing a decreasing intensity of the height of the building. So in exchange, they're looking for increased setbacks to meet that width that they'll need to get the same number of rooms.
But they're basically in keeping with the setbacks that are currently in the PUD that they're within.
Correct.
We're just pulling them out to make their own PUD, and the benefit of that is it's gonna allow us to create a PUD in one swoop, and then close out a PUD in one swoop. And that seems to, that's become an issue here for us in the city of, we've got the never-ending saga of 20-year-old PUDs that still haven't been developed fully.
And doing our research with the 26th, that's a 24-year-old PUD at this point that featured redevelopment on 16 different sites, and some have gotten done, some haven't gotten done. So to Ken's point, this is a one-shot PUD, one owner, one developer, so it can move much, much more succinctly forward.
Has any current PUD that's been fully phased out, have we had as a city issues with the exception to the setback lines, in some cases 0, and in the parking standards that we've seen, have those met the needs of the customer in the city, or has it created some issues with the leniency in the parking requirement and in the setback? Are we having any issues with experience?
Not that I'm aware of. And if somebody had a parking problem, we're normally the first ones they call, even though it shouldn't be us. We're normally the first ones they call, and I've heard no complaints in regard to parking from anyone on the completed PUDs we have.
I think that's important with them, with their considerations of where we're at with that, so that makes sure we're doing a good job.
Before the applicant comes up, can you go back over real briefly what the benefits, the public benefits are?
So there is a 30-foot alley to the south that's being approved, a 20-foot one to the north on the ocean front that has some improvements that is going to be improved even further. And then they're going to have 10-foot sidewalks and then 4-foot landscaping verge on Ocean Boulevard and maintaining the 20-foot drive aisle. And then they have pedestrian improvement installation, so sidewalk, crosswalks to get across from the garage to the hotel.
So these are also good questions for the applicant, because they'll talk a little bit more in depth. What's not included here, if you actually read the language of the PUD, there are some other considerations that they've brought forward with their public improvements. This is just the stuff that is located specifically to these sites.
Okay.
Any other questions to staff? Not, we'll open up to the applicant. Come forward. Good afternoon, Mr. Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification, Caitlin did a great job with that. This is a representative elevation, so these are in other markets, but I think some of you that are as old as I am remember Drury as more of an interstate hotel, or you visited the Greensboro Coliseum. That's always the one for us that's most famous. And I think the point was to let you guys know that they have also evolved. This is more representative now that they're in Nashville and Disney and some other locations, that it has evolved much more. The one slide prior to this was really a massing exhibit like you all saw when we did Margaritaville, just to show it in relation to the other buildings around it. We still subscribe to the theory that CAB ultimately has all the aesthetic control over this project. I'm not trying to take that away from them, but we did want you to understand what those massing exhibits look like. As Cameron said, there are some other nuances to this project that you don't see on most of them. These guys closed on the property in February of 2005. At least one child for Cameron prior to that. We'd already been having discussions with council about where we were going with this, because it did two things. One, the city has that lot in the rear that's been platted forever. Zeb, you've seen that plat as long as I have. And then with the alleys, we are quickly getting to the point where the alley swap for oceanfront isn't available. So we started looking at, well, what are the other options from the city's perspective that still solve problems for them? So that swap in this instance is not an alley for an alley. it's the two alleys that are being acquired for an off-site property. The city had some interest both from a public safety and from a redevelopment standpoint. So those are really the nuances that you wouldn't typically see in your typical hotel project. We did honor some of the things that this group's talked about in the past. I think Margaritaville in specific, we had the issue with the not creating that tunnel on the sidewalk, so we've got the 24 feet up just as we did there. Thankfully, we're not proposing a pedestrian overwalk here, so you don't have to spend any time on that this time. There are some trees on this site that we're aware of, and we're working around those. Obviously, CAB will weigh in on those too, but the developer's desire is to preserve as many trees as you can because we don't have many of them left in the city. From an occupancy standpoint, the ocean front is where the occupancy will be. The rear lots are either pedestrian access or for parking improvements. So everything stays on the ocean front. It's not like Margaritaville where we shifted to the second row and had amenities on the front. Their amenities will be included on the ocean front. I think Cameron also said, and I think you guys are aware, that the city's strong preference is to no longer have multiple owner PUDs. It causes them some control issues, and it also leads to these remnant PUDs that aren't fully developed. I think if you'll remember, was it last year or 2 years ago when we proposed withdrawing a remnant lot from an old PUD, and what ultimately happened was we collapsed the PUD instead and got rid of it. It went to MUH. Doesn't really penalize the property owners on those remnant parcels because they're not going to be assembled with anything else anyway. So that's the likely outcome here. So far, we have gotten support for a single owner PUD for a single project, so it gets built out and it's not residual. It does have the language that council's asked for, which is essentially a sunset and a reversion. So when the PUD goes away, it would go back to MUH. So all those provisions that you are used to seeing have been included in this one. Cameron Parker is the engineer of record. He's here also, and the principals from Drury are also here. So if you have any questions for any of us, we're more than happy to answer those.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
If approved, how many years are you looking out for a build out?
Well, it's got a 10-year window for the sunset. We think it's roughly 2 years to be fully permitted, and then build out after that. The parking structure will probably be the last thing finished on this, so unless there's some kind of economic downturn, this will happen well inside of that 10-year period.
So, I mean, will it be phased or will it all be built at pretty much one time?
All at once. Yeah,
Because it all supports each other, right?
Yeah. There's a possibility, and you know this, that if the demand is there later on, we'd have to come back for a major amendment. But in theory, you could have a second stage that included the parking, improvements over the parking and the vacant lot on the third row. But I don't think you could justify that from an ADR standpoint now. So there's only one phase proposed today, just the oceanfront accommodation.
So did the applicant purchase the park from the city? Is that what
That's part of the, that's
part of the deal?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll buy that for the city at fair market value or something?
Buying that at fair market value and then the swap for the other property also necessitates a fair market value determination since it's not oceanfront for oceanfront. So both of those appraisals have been started. Before we get to council, they'll have a handle on where that's going.
And then with the alleyway swap on the oceanfront, there'll be no net loss in frontage to the public?
There will be. There will be. The two 20-foot alleys will go away, and in exchange for that, they're getting off ocean property. What they are doing is improving the existing alley on the north, and then if you'll remember, it's, as Cameron corrects me, it's not an alley because it's 30 feet. It's a street end that's closest to Anderson Ocean end. That one will have to be improved. It was never improved in the original PUD, so these guys are taking the responsibility to improve that, be able to connect that, so you've got pedestrian access from the parking structures on the third row across that second row property, which will only be improved with some parking, and then down to the 30-foot wide street end is improved for public access to the beach between the new project and the Anderson end.
I think one thing to look at along the line that you're going with on that, Zeb, is there's still gonna be a beach access in every block.
And it'll be a private beach access available to the public, or will it?
It'll be a public beach access.
It'll be public, okay. So it will be, I mean, and owned by the city,
That's right.
okay.
You will never have to walk more than half a block to get to a beach access.
And that beach access will not be covered, it'll still be a,
It's still open.
okay.
Yeah.
What property are you proposing to, acquire for the city in return for the alleyways?
It's the current Oasis, I guess you'd call it a convenience store of sorts down in the.
Okay.
the old area.
Where is it located on this plat?
It's not.
It's not on that map.
Okay.
Over there.
This is part of the 501 realignment and redevelopment.
It's near our downtown area in regard with the 501 project that we have currently going on.
Okay,
It's in close vicinity of that.
right.
So, I mean, at one time, we had a policy where there'd be no net loss in public ownership of the ocean front. I assume the city council decided to depart from that policy.
Above my pay grade.
Yeah, they haven't approved it yet, but it's on the.
But that's, I mean, that's been made aware to them that they're moving in a different direction than what they previously had.
Even prior to the change in the current council, I won't say we had support from Councilman Smith, but he at least understood the reasoning behind that change. If you remember, he's always been the one that was the most adamant that we weren't going to exchange anything but oceanfront for oceanfront.
And we've had multiple staff level discussions in regard to that.
Anyone else want to ask questions before I ask mine?
Yeah, I was gonna say, now, before we finish, I do want just a couple of minutes so the jewelry guys can introduce themselves, and they're a family business. They're not a franchise, they're not looking to stabilize and sell off to a REIT or some other fund, so I think it's important you guys at least understand their philosophy for why they do what they do.
We'll do that.
And on that note, I'd like to say that we as a city are excited to have jewelry coming into our city. I think what Shep said earlier is they're known as like a I-95 kind of type hotel. Well, I-95 hotels bring a whole lot more to the public sometimes than the oceanfront hotels do, but they're bringing that same I-95 approach to that oceanfront. And that's very commendable on my part. So just because they're changing their location, they are not changing their model one bit, and that's to be applauded as far as I'm concerned.
A few questions. The conventions facility, from what I understand, allows, will that be rented out to the public as well, those rooms?
The meeting space will be available for private events, yes.
For the public to rent out?
Yes.
Is there any parking allowances for that?
I can't answer that question based on the current plan.
I can tell you in past PUDs and past developments, we have not. Normally the way those rooms work is if like a convention's coming into town, they're gonna have their convention meeting space in that public area, and they're staying in that hotel.
Right.
It allows them to have groups to come in to hold those types of things. I don't think that that is a thing to be rented out if somebody wants to have a private wedding. I'm not saying it couldn't be, but there's probably gonna be a certain number of rooms that have to be purchased in regard to that. But they're not just making a public, it's not gonna become a wedding venue just for the weekend type thing. Yes, sir. That is not the intent. That is not the intent.
Financially, it's not viable to do
I'm
that.
starting to worry about Kenny's getting my mind too much. Not on this, the 2,000 square foot lot, which is that?
2,000 square foot lot is only there because of the alleys, because there's two
Okay.
existing alleys in there.
I was hoping that's what it was, I was making sure. So the building coverage of the land's 90%. It's going to be allowed. How's that fit into our
Very tightly.
approach that we'll be going forward with? We've got land use plan, getting ready to redo that element, and we got the rezone right. 90% of land, that's more than I think I've ever seen them in. But
Well, we're already in
The
discussion.
master plan alone is set up at 98%. We start looking at market common, so, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to have that much coverage on the lot.
so now the commercial PUDs that we've had, we've allowed up to 90%.
But we're also talking to the applicant too, there may be some ways that we pick up some additional green space in regard to it, of some of the things that we've been discussing. Not saying that that's gonna happen, I'm just saying it's a possible option based off directions and things that we're able to get put into place. But we have, that was a number that, yes, even though it's within the requirements, it is still an eye-catching number that draws attention to it. And the applicant has agreed that is something that we can discuss, but there's no promises been made in regard to that.
So if y'all can do that in between, that would be good too.
Yeah, and part of that, Phil, comes from that second row lot. If you look at it, we're showing parking there now.
Right.
But that parking is accessed by an alley, which is probably not compliant with the code. So if that goes away and that all becomes green space on that second row, then that helps. We've got room in the parking facility on the third row that we can add the spaces we need there instead. So
What do you mean by grass paving in that parking lot area? What,
on the rear of it, where there's that existing alley behind it, so seasonally, there is a probability that somebody would want to park there in those few public spaces. But the rest of the year, it would be what I call grass pavers. They're concrete, but the grass grows through them, so they have some stability.
Pine Lakes Country Club's a good example.
okay,
The Pine Lakes Country Club golf course.
Thank you
If you
for
look
that.
at it, it looks like grass, but you can drive on it because it's got the brick in there too.
I read that, and some reason I know what you're talking about.
It didn't make sense to make it a hardscape for somebody to use 90 days out of the year at most.
So I'm still having trouble understanding how the alleyways aren't part of the site. I mean, because when I look at, is that not the boundary right there? So the boundary goes all the way to the boundary of the,
They're within the PUD, they're not owned by the developer.
okay, so the developer's property will end where the building line is?
Yeah.
Okay,
And the reason for that was because they've got improvement obligations on the city property, so by including them in the PUD, those obligations follow.
Are the lighter greens not city-owned properties, Mr. Guy?
The lighter green on the oceanfront are.
Okay.
Yes.
and how is it that it's staggered like that? You know, normally it's a kind of a gradual line along the front that the original developer gave the city years ago.
So the one on the south end in particular was actually the 30-foot street end plus a 20-foot public alleyway, so there's 50 feet there altogether.
Which one's the public alley again?
Okay, so alley is the 20-foot, which would be the northern one.
Okay.
The wider one on the bottom is the south end, which technically is the street end, so I've been corrected. I can't call that an alley, that's a street end.
That's the one referred to as the alley. This is the one that was formerly a 50-foot combination. That was 30-foot roadway and 20-foot alley. And now we're just going with the 30-foot down here on that.
And then there was
So that was
another
one
alley
slot.
between the two.
Yeah.
So, Shep, will there be any kind of like grass or, I mean, green space between the hard scape of the building and the sidewalk that's going down these alleyways to get to the beach?
So the northern one is paved today, it's a hardscape already. The one on the south end is not improved at all, it's just dirt. So that will be landscaped heavily, still with a walk path through there with pavers, but it will be very green, very lit, what you're expecting to see.
But
There's not much we can do with the northern one, because it already exists as hardscape.
I mean, since you're going in there anyway, could you rip up a little bit of the concrete right there next to the building line just to have a,
That's the plan, is that we'll put some landscaping on that northern boundary against our building.
just to soften the impact, you know, up against the building? I mean, otherwise you have a hard building up against concrete, it just doesn't.
Which is what it is today.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got room to do that, and we'll put it may be ground cover, but it'll be green. It won't be just hardscape.
It'd be nice to get some kind of shrubbery in there, I mean, you know, just to soften the.
I think one of the other things that we could do to kind of address what I kind of feel from this board is how do we delineate the public from the private in regard to accesses? We're going to request that they do the same thing that we've done in similar situations, that whatever pavement or concrete colors that you have on your property, the ones on the public access is differentiate, so it doesn't look like the same one going all the way across. And that's been the way that we've delineated between those in the past. And I'm sure this is exactly what we will do on this one as well.
Still going to be a restaurant on site.
There will,
Open to the public?
open to the public, but as Ken said, these guys come from a background of hospitality. They're used to having to make a reason why somebody would stop at their hotel as opposed to somewhere else. And as most of you know, your typical roadside hotel now, you're talking about, I call them printer pancakes that come out of the machine. And they don't do that. They actually have somebody that prepares food on site.
In your PUD, you referenced the allowance to use public right-of-way for parking during the construction period. What public right-of-ways are you speaking of?
That would typically be on the second road, particularly where those alleys are adjacent to the middle part, on each side of that, where we're showing the parking
Right
access.
there where that
Yes.
center parking's at, is too.
Yes.
Will you use that as a staging area to put equipment and stuff?
The third row is likely gonna be the staging area for materials and equipment. So,
Would you be opposed to putting up a fence that hides the staging area rather than it being exposed to the open air?
no, I suspect by the time we get through with code enforcement and CAB, we're gonna get all kinds of restrictions like that, so we don't have any problem with that. That's fine.
Well, please consider that you'll put it in as part of the requirement because
Sure.
not all staging areas are currently that way.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Ship, if I may.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Charlie, I'm part of the ownership group, but we're our own GC, so we're about as vertically integrated as you might see. We do our own real estate development, we do our own construction management, we own our own cranes, tower cranes, move them from site to site. We got 5 hotels under construction at any one time. We even operate all our own hotels, we don't franchise. So, to your point, we're very concerned about screening. You know, when we move into a community, we want to be there for a lifetime. And we want to start out by being good neighbors, and then there's just general safety concerns we have as a GC, where we want to put up screening fence in our station areas.
Now, the second row parking, is that going to be just like vehicles or is it,
Well,
transportation vehicles or is it going to be big construction equipment? What is it going to be, second row?
you're talking about during construction or after
During.
construction?
All of the above.
Yeah, all of the above.
As well as employee parking, as well as the employees that are working on the construction are gonna be parking there as well.
Yeah, but they could have equipment there and everything else.
I mean, at some point, you're gonna need pump trucks, and you're gonna have to stage them to pump all the levels, so, I mean, that would be it's either that or they're using Ocean Boulevard.
We're gonna have to accept that it's gonna have to be ugly before it gets beautiful.
Yes, but we can accept the limitation of that. I mean, I know they gotta get in and out of like the second row and third row. It don't mean that they have all 4 sides opened up to the wide world. They could cover 3 of the sides in the back, get the way in versus the front.
Right.
Or something like that. That's what I'm trying to think of. I think this is beautiful looking, and I think this is, whoever you're gonna work with, all of you's done a great job with that. But, things that sit around for 1 and 2 years of developing and construction, and it's the same site, there's ways we can buffer that.
I agree.
Rather than just be open exposure.
And the beach doesn't close just because we're under construction, we understand that. We're still gonna have the public using those areas, so it's in their benefit to not only screen, but to.
And I think the one that's currently being developed near that motel, they're doing a great job with how they put this fencing up with the screens. So when you're going down Ocean Boulevard, people on Ocean Boulevard are seeing it all.
That's right.
But we've seen so many of them that's been developed that they just leave all 4 sides open and the whole world sees it, where we could maybe cover that on the second, third row versus making it all the way around.
Make it more aesthetically pleasing.
Huh?
Make it aesthetically pleasing. That's what
Exactly.
you're looking
And there's a way to do that.
And I think Charlie's right, because they are integrated, he didn't mention that they even have in-house engineering, but, they don't have to argue about a change order to do that. They do what needs to be done, and they're not having to argue with the GC that's independent about how much that's gonna cost to maintain.
Right, we appreciate that. Any other questions?
So just to be clear,
Sure.
what you're showing up here is the private open space. That is actually part of those existing lots right now. That's not part of the city-owned property
That's right.
in front.
That's right. Charlie, you wanna say a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a good salesman, so.
Oh, nobody's as good as Shep. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the opportunity this afternoon. My name is Charlie Drury. I'm a Director of Development for Drury Development. We're a family-owned and operated company. We're over 53 years old. We started in a little town of 400 in southeast Missouri, doing plastering because the bank took the family farm away. So I know there might be some bankers here in the room, but I won't say anything mean about them. Anyways,
Thank you.
we
But I did understand the 95 concept because of that, so.
Certainly. But we got in the hotels half by accident. Our founders started GCing, and they did a job for a guy named Kimmons Wilson, who was the founder of Holiday Inns. And then they said, well, this was, easy, relatively. We could do this over and over again ourselves at scale, kind of like making a McDonald's hamburger. So they tried one, and they tried another, and Chet mentioned we had a lot along the interstate highways. And is it, Caitlin, could you go back to that last slide? So, one thing led to another. Eventually, Holiday Inn stopped giving us franchises, and we started putting our own names on the building. And that was in 1973. And so today we have about 150 locations in soon to be 27 states. We have about 6,500 employees and about 24,000 hotel rooms under management. One of the largest hotel management companies in North America. So, there's brands out there that are bigger, but we're all wholly owned and operated. So Shep mentioned we're doing architecture and engineering in-house. We will work with great local civils and architects when you get into markets, so we understand. We don't think we know it better. We want to come in and, like I said earlier, be a member of the community for a lifetime. We only build out of concrete and steel. We don't use wood structurally. And we even make most of our own furniture that goes in the hotel rooms here in the United States and southeast Missouri. We supply the hotels monthly out of our warehouse and supply company in southeast Missouri. So really, truly, about as cradle to grave as you might see in the industry. We're not looking to stabilize and flip. We're looking to reinvest, after you get past 20 years, 30 years. Oftentimes, we're spending more on those hotels than it took to build them in the first place, just to keep them relevant to customers' expectations and what's relevant in the market. So, 19 J.D. Powers by our operating team, and that's never been done by one of the big boys out there. Proud of that. What we're more proud of is 6,500 employees in an industry that averages over 100% turnover annually. We have less than 40% annually, including all hourly. We've got a lot of great upward mobility. Two of our vice presidents at the operating group started as hourly team members at our properties, working in housekeeping or front desk. So we're growing, and we're hopeful to be part of your community soon. And the question was asked earlier, how soon would you start? We'd start as soon as we could, so as soon as you'll approve us. But some of recent examples here, Chet mentioned it. On the top right, as you look at the screen, that's inside Walt Disney World on park grounds. It's one of only 8 hotels that's non-Disney owned or operated inside the park. It's 19 stories, roughly 600 rooms. It's got everything but the monorail stop. And over the last, it's been open about 3 years. It has been #1 on TripAdvisor. It changes every day, but multiple times in all of Orlando. So it averages between 1 and 5, but that's quite an accomplishment for our operating team there, and we're really proud of them and really proud of those team members. Other examples here, downtown Nashville at 3rd and Korean Veterans. Have you been downtown Nashville recently? Anybody?
Not me.
Well, right when you come across the river, the Titan Stadium's over on the east side of the river. Come across that iconic bridge on the south side. We're the first hotel on your right. 22 stories, about 400 rooms, and there's 6 levels of parking integrated into that building there. It's about 0.6 acres square, on a postage stamp, basically. And we had 350 people on the job every day for about 2 years to get that done. On the bottom, you see 2 shots of our property inside Pigeon Forge. It's right across from the convention center on the Riverwalk, right there at Jake Thomas and the Parkway, if y'all are familiar. But that's just a little bit about us. Do you have any questions?
What percentage would you say are resort properties versus your overall portfolio?
I don't know that we say we have any resort properties. We have 2 flags we built today. The Drury Plaza Hotel and the Drury Inn and Suites. The Drury Plaza Hotel is a more upper upscale brand, It's full service. We have a cooked order restaurant inside of it, but we also have meeting space and a lot of the amenities that you might, in this market, consider a resort. And here we intend to build a Druid Plaza Hotel.
Now y'all see why I said we're excited to have them come in our town.
Well, we're excited to be here.
Thank you. Glad to meet you.
You as well.
Look forward to seeing you all.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Okay. That's it. Right, we'll move on. Text 2603.
This is a request by Robert S. Hatton to amend the 26th Avenue Oceanfront Forest PUD by removing 4 parcels in order to create the new 27th Avenue North Hotel PUD, to facilitate the redevelopment of the Sea Dip Motel, and to facilitate a new single property owner PUD for development of an oceanfront hotel.
Any question for staff?
I think we pretty much covered most of this already.
Okay.
Do want to note something here, so, just get to here. Sorry, steal your thunder, Caitlin. So when we were doing our due diligence here on this one, the applicant originally came in requesting to pull out the 4 pieces of property that comprise the old Sea Dip Hotel. Notice that it would strand the properties that you see in green here, and PUDs require contiguity of land, so it would strand everything in the green outside of the 26th Avenue North PUD. That's been communicated with the applicant. The applicant's been aware and reaching out to the property owners of all the properties within the green, and it sounds like at least one of the owners at this point is okay being removed from the 26th Avenue North PUD, and waiting on confirmation from the second, but those would be coming out of the 26th Avenue North PUD and just rezoned as MUH, so that way there would not be any non-conformities with the PUD of the 26th Avenue North PUD. We did all of our research and found that removing both the Sea Dip properties as well as the remainders in green wouldn't affect the stability of the 26th Avenue North PUD. All of that property that you see in the purple and the green was slated to be part of the future Sea Dip development that never happened, so that can be ejected from the 26th without harming any of the other properties within the 26th.
So nothing left remaining, and nothing that's in the pink or the green is married to anything else within the PUD. It can be standalone just as we're showing it.
So we'll make that correction moving forward for the next meeting to include the other 5 properties that are listed in green to be removed.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Applicant, would like to?
Sure. Again, just like we talked about before, they have to come out of the old PUD to go in and create the new PUD. There's nothing left to be developed except the putt-putt in the old PUD. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the 26th Avenue PUD go the same way as the one we dismantled a couple of years ago. I think you'll see that very soon, where it becomes all MUH as well.
Any questions?
No question, just a comment. Those trees back there in that park are absolutely beautiful, those oak trees. I mean, they really are, and I understand they're gonna have to go in order to build a parking garage, but to the extent y'all could plant some other oaks back there to, make up for some of that loss, that would be nice. Even if it's on, even if it's in the public right of way and, next to the sidewalk or something like that. It just, I mean, you're losing some really beautiful trees. So.
Absolutely. And I think you gotta replace them, as we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Putting nothing there doesn't work.
But maybe oak trees too, to
Yeah.
make up for some of that.
As long as they're not close to the sidewalk, I can't get that support from
Yeah, I
staff.
know.
I love the canopy over the sidewalk, but staff does not.
Destroys everything.
Works fine in Georgetown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chairman,
Yep.
come back in. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you for attending, sir. We had a vote to bring you back in this chair. Just had some of those.
Works for me. All right, moving on, text 2604, storage tanks. Taisha.
This is a request from the City of Myrtle Beach to amend Article 14 of the City of Myrtle Beach Code of Ordinance, adding the use of storage tanks to the WM zoning district. Here we have the proposed amendment, and currently, right now, storage tanks are allowed in AP and LM as a permitted use. This change would allow it to be a permitted use under WM. Currently, it is a conditional use under HC. Here we have it mapped showing where storage tanks would be allowed. As I've said, it's allowed in AP and LM, and then with this change it will be in WM. There are 5 WMs in the city. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
What's driving this? What's the need for storage tanks in WM?
First, looking at a lighter zone that allows it where the heavier zone didn't, so we're just making some corrections.
This kind of
Would
makes,
there be any requirement to have enclosures around those storage tanks?
that's a,
From either a safety or a
Yeah,
aesthetic?
we meet building code requirements.
I'm sorry?
There's building code requirements.
Okay.
and the same thing that we did, whenever we did the propane tank at Ace Hardware down
Yeah.
there, the fire department always weighs in too. What the fire department says
Right.
carries the greatest amount of weight.
I remember that, having
Yeah.
that discussion.
The fire department carries, so the fire department will be involved in this as well. So we really don't have to establish what those guidelines are because they're already in the fire code, building code, as Charlie stated.
And if we create them and they change the fire or building code, then we have to update our code, so it's a lot easier just to cycle through the normal process.
So, is any WM along the 501 corridor, or is it all over there, kind of that close around Seaboard?
The like closest spot is Seaboard Street.
So, along Seaboard Street, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, you got Seaboard, then you got a little bit of Cannon, it gets close to it.
okay.
And these properties are gonna, one of these WM properties is gonna be where the new,
Bus station, fire station's gonna be.
new bus station and fire station is gonna be going at. And that's one of the reasons that we're needing that above ground tank is for the new bus stations that are going in there. That's gonna be more than a bus stop that's going in there. So that's what, that was a big push for it too. But then like Charlie said, it only makes sense for us, we allowed in the less restricted manufacturing zoning of light manufacturing. Why not allow it in the more restricted zoning of the warehouse manufacturing? It's almost a Scribner's error there a little bit as well.
Except for you're kind of pushing up closer to the tourist areas, you know, that where I think the appearance and matters more.
Well,
You know, I mean, you know,
we're not going much further, I mean, there's a piece of green up at the top on the north that's already in there, so we really aren't going beyond. The only way, the place that we're really going beyond where it's allowed is if you go toward the ocean a little bit, where we've got some warehouse manufacturing over there that we're allowing it to go into, but it's all kind of stay and maneuver between the small pieces of green, so really not expanding it too much.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Moving on, communications from staff.
Yep, first one's a Clemson PUD minor amendment update. Charlie's gonna handle this one.
Pretty easy one. Current site, we're looking at a bank. In the current PUD, this is the location of the sign. Cam, this will be the new location of the sign. So we're just floating where the sign's gonna go.
Go from one corner to the other. Flip back to the previous slide, see, we're going from there to there.
this is across from the Walmart shopping center,
So
basically.
no, this will be around the Publix area. So anytime we do a
okay.
minor amendment, I gotta bring that information to you when I make that determination. This is one of those where I agree that it doesn't intensify, we're just moving one dot to another dot. Any
Same
questions?
piece of property, different location. Yep.
What about,
Well, and this is also why we label things conceptual rather than final.
you're building that connection to the property over there on the south side, that's outside of the city, right?
I don't know what you're referring to.
Oh, right here. Has this already been approved?
Yeah, it's already built.
That's already built.
You can go drive one if you want.
Haven't ever been in there. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right on.
looking at the bank, the existing site on the PUD didn't work out for their sign location where the building placement came in. So they chose to float it. That's where they reached out to us so we could modify that in a minor amendment.
Good. Thank you.
Up next, as requested So Jason Green with MBDA has come in to give y'all an update on where they are with their downtown development.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be back here to speak to you today. I have to say, I've been called a lot of things since I started here at the downtown lines, but intentional is one that I really like. And I like to say that because I think all of the work that I've been able to do with Ken and the team here at the Planning and Zoning Department and with the Planning Commission and other committees and departments within the city has been really helpful to really understand like what we need to do to kind of move downtown forward. I know this has been a long journey for a long time. I want to give a little bit of history just because I think it's important to give context to the work that we've done since I've started. The downtown master plan that was adopted in 2019, that's still the governing document. I often get asked and commented too about why are we using that document, and I think we are. I mean, honestly, it's the governing document that we use to drive all the planning that has happened since then, and I think it's important to recognize that that document still stands. I know there were previous iterations of that in prior decades that existed before. They're very much similar, in my opinion, from looking at the old ones, considering the 2019 version. With the exception of the road alignment that's happening on Oak Street now, which is certainly part of that. A subsequent document that came after that, I kind of regard these documents as somewhat of a hierarchy that kind of drives the processes that we put together internally. And that master plan is certainly the most important one. The downtown development framework that James Leam and his team put together back in 2020, if you remember that one, or these particular conversations around that, that was an important document as well. That kind of gave a development framework around the idea of what downtown could become. I kind of see that as a visioning document around, and it implements the master plan, because I think it's important to recognize that what it is, but it's incomplete, and it was incomplete on purpose for the sake of other work that needed to come from that. And then came the A&I advanced plan that was developed by LS3P in 2020 as well. That had a very specific concentration in the Arts and Innovation District, but it left the rest of downtown somewhat uncharacterized, in my opinion, and looking at the rest of that. The master plan was the framework. The development framework was kind of a visioning document. The A&I plan was very specific in terms of characterization of the A&I district, but the rest of downtown was kind of left undone. In terms of characterization. So we received a grant from Partnership Grand Strand to create the Advanced Residential Plan, which pretty much developed a characterization of the rest of downtown. Now that hasn't been approved yet, nor has it made it to council or any other body for that matter, but it is a document that we're using to kind of help establish what the character of the future vision of downtown can become, which I think is important. And then what came kind of parallel to that was the design guidelines that I worked very closely with the planning and zoning staff, and Cam and I have had more conversations than I can count around that document and the creation of those documents. Mostly around the zoning rewrite and making sure that there was continuity between the zoning rewrite and the documents that we were putting together. I'm very proud of what the MBDA was able to work with and the teams. And it wasn't just us, it was a lot of city staff that contributed to that, and the community input was extensive. I think we had over 16 community input meetings, about 400 conversations with individuals over the course of the last 2 years to put all of this together. I feel like there's a lot of continuity there, but it's still incomplete. And the reason it is, we left the last 20% undone on purpose. What we learned from community input is that the community wanted a very strong voice in terms of the future version of downtown. And I think it's important to recognize that their voice carries a lot of weight. One of the things that we learned from those conversations is that we had to develop a process to collect that information pretty rapidly and incorporate that into plans that could be used for funding in the future. And so we did a lot of research on grants that were available. We did a lot of research on how the community, kind of questions we needed to ask that would help us win federal and state grants, which we think is a big piece of this puzzle for downtown redevelopment. And so we developed 2 programs specifically, one of which is our revitalization program. And that program is designed to be working in very specific areas of downtown to recognize, one, that these areas have very specific cultures and very specific identities that need to be elevated. Ocean Boulevard was our first block. We piloted that back in November. And what we learned from those conversations is that their needs are vastly different than the needs of Carver Street, vastly different than the needs of Broadway Street. So we replicated that process. We're currently on Carver Street now. Our intention is to go to Broadway Street, and we think there'll probably be about 20 blocks, put that in quotations because the geographic areas vary, But one of the ideas around that is we want to really understand what drives the cultural aspect of downtown and elevate that to create downtown into this very unique place that we think will embrace this future vision that we're after. And that culture, in my opinion, and the history that comes along with that is something that I think will be vastly different than any other place we have in the city because of the extensive history and the culture that exists now. So we put all of that together. We are in full implementation mode right now. The other program that we created is a revitalization redevelopment program, tackling the vacant lots in the back, working with developers and landowners, trying to match them together so that they can start working things that are congruent with what exists in those specific areas of downtown. So I'm proud to say that we're moving forward with all of these things right now, and that's kind of where we are at the moment. That's a short update, but I just wanted to let you all know and how much I appreciate all the input that I've received from this body and from the staff in terms of what we've been doing. So, any questions that I can answer?
When is the theater supposed to be scheduled there?
According to the city, I think it's supposed to be open sometime this fall. I think November was the latest date that I heard. There's a secondary theater that's privately owned that is going on across the street there at the old Chapin building, right on the corner of 501 and Oak Street that I'm aware of. I think that process has started. I'm not exactly sure where they are in the permitting or all of that, but I know that they have the funding for that to kind of move forward.
With the 501 realignment, those old storefronts, like where Ed's Hobby Shop is, at one time I thought those are going to be lost to the 501 realignment.
They are. They haven't been torn down yet. I think they just finished the abatement a couple of weeks ago. I meet with the city's project manager for the roads every Friday morning. We walk around and kind of look at the projects. Last I was told that the abatement was completed. They were scheduled for demolition last week. I guess that got delayed a little bit, but it should be any day now that those were torn down. It's my understanding, based on the current construction schedule, that from the DOT, that 501 should be open for traffic by Memorial Day if they finish the demolition in time. But I don't think the roads will be completely decorated and the lights will be finished, but I think the traffic for vehicular traffic in that intersection should be approved by then. Now that could change by this Friday night, as I've learned. Yes, sir.
The support for when there's revitalization for the business to invest something into that, is that going in a very positive direction, or is it the concept? What we're talking about is if M&DA is going to, and the city's going to revitalize a section or group of businesses, there should be some investment by the business in return to help with the improvements and the upkeep and to maintain the investment, not just have it and then watch it go back downhill again.
Yeah, one of the things to kind of expand upon that, one of the things that we've learned in the revitalization program we have is that we have to be very intentional, as I mentioned earlier, about creating a partnership with the oceanfront merchants or the residents or businesses in a certain area. And we have to view that as a public-private partnership, in my opinion. The city certainly has an obligation to do their part in the public realm, whether that's improvements or maintenance or anything else like that. But we also feel like the business owners or the landowners in those areas or the residents have an obligation as well as part of the partnership. Some may or may not have the means to do whatever they need to do. We have to recognize that as well. And we have to recognize that we could inadvertently displace people without thinking through how we're going to control displacement, right? Especially with legacy business owners or those that don't have the means to continue with rising property values and these sorts of things. So we have to be very intentional about building a partnership that works for the blocks that we're working in. And I say blocks again in quotation marks because they're more than just a city block in some cases. We have to think through what their challenges are, think through what they want to aspire to become, and make sure that's intentionally using the documents that govern this work to make sure that they're in concert with that. Whether it's design guidelines, streetscapes, or anything like that, that we're driving that vision forward, but in partnership with the community at large. And I feel like that's what this program is providing that we put together.
So one more question, where is the new bus transfer station going to be located?
It's my understanding it's going to be on the corner of Joe White Avenue and Grissom Parkway.
Okay. On that northwestern corner or?
North,
In
south,
between Seaward and
southwestern corner.
501.
Yeah.
Or in between Joe White and 501.
Behind the gas station that's there, yes, in the nursery on the corner.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah, that was the funding that was approved. The project still has work to do. I'm working with construction services now on that. If you're not familiar with the project, council I presented back in December and in January to secure funding for a lighting project that involved decorative lighting along Ocean Boulevard between 9th and Joe White Avenue. There's still construction work to do, engineering and things like that needs to be worked out. That work is progressing. We're a little bit behind schedule at the moment, but we're working on a parallel temporary solution to try to meet something by summer. But that's kind of where we are with it at the moment.
Has there been buy-in from the ocean top merchants?
Yeah,
as
actually,
far
it's part
as-
of our block program and the community input we had. That was one of the requests that they had to do something with lights. Informally, these conversations started in June of last year. We formalized those in November for the sake of collecting information. So what we presented was more of an idea than an actual finalized product. I think it's going to look a tiny bit differently based on some of the input we got after that meeting. Largely, I want folks climbing up and scaling the scaffolding that we had in mind for the sides, which I think was a great idea that was presented as part of that. And then also the spacing needed to be more consistent with what the fire trucks needed to be able to lift their ladders and these sorts of things. So it's changed the scope a tiny bit, but I think for the better, and certainly for public safety and ease of access for maintenance, which are all required pieces that need to be considered.
Anything else for Jason?
Just a quick question, I don't know if it's in your purview or not. In doing this development downtown, have you all looked at our homeless population or near homeless population and what's going to happen? Because that sometimes can be a detriment for people wanting to come downtown.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot from the community input about like how is this going to be wrangled. I look at that particular challenge that we have as being more of a multifaceted, multi-departmental, multi-organization kind of collaboration, in my opinion. We certainly have to create activity that drives out antisocial behavior. That's one of the roles that we play in this kind of collaboration, right? We don't really, and we also provide a funnel, to get folks services for those that want them, right? There's a couple of stories that I heard this last summer that really just kind of blew my mind away. There was a family of 7 that came down. I guess they ended up spending all their money. They couldn't get back home. They found themselves homeless. So the Gold Cap ambassadors came and kind of helped get the grandmother to the women's shelter, the father to the men's shelter, and then the mother with the kids to the family shelter. It took about 2 days to kind of figure all this out. But they had to really work with their family wherever they came from to get the funding to get home. That's just one example, and I've learned that there's about 50 or 60 scenarios that the Gold Cap ambassadors deal with significantly nearly every summer of varying things like that, including folks that are just kind of chronically homeless and kind of dealing with the services that need to happen. But the collaboration between the Gold Cap ambassadors, who I oversee, and the community at large and the police department is pretty miraculous, in my opinion, in terms of how they coordinate getting folks to the services they need. There's certainly folks that don't want to, take advantage of the services. I'm not sure how to address that, honestly, but we think that our role in the events that we put on and the entertainment we provide is part of driving the antisocial behavior away, which is a piece of that puzzle.
I mean, locating the transfer station still inside the city of Myrtle Beach, has that been discussed at all?
I have, my conversations have been more tangential to, like, I think what, how to solve that. I'm aware that those conversations are happening. I'm not involved in every single one of those. But we know that vacant lots and some of the improvements will certainly help as well as we go. Revitalization is a big part of that.
I just said, when you see the situation you have at Chapin Park, and if you create more public space, I feel like you need to be looking at solutions to keep that public space available for all of the public, rather than, just certain elements.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I'm not exactly sure how to solve it. I think I feel like we solve the symptoms better than solving the problem, if that makes sense. And the symptoms are what we're dealing with on a regular basis. But I think those are all challenges that our community has to embrace and really figure out. I'm not sure that the MBDA, is the only organization that needs to be involved in that.
I don't disagree, but that's what everybody says too.
Yeah.
That's the cop-out.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's a complicated problem, understandably, but it's also an important problem that for downtown redevelopment flourish
Yeah,
needs to be addressed. So
It
it's
does.
a very important pillar of what you've got going on.
yeah, I think moving the bus to Grissom Parkway is a good first,
Will help.
or is a good step in that direction. I think that helps Tom. I think there are other things that can happen. I'm just, it's making sure that everyone that's involved in those solutions are providing the solutions that are necessary.
Anything else?
All right.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Land use?
Yes, I'm looking to finalize the volunteers for the land use. I currently have 2, Sharon and Paul, looking for 2 more. I believe Austin and
I'll volunteer.
Jeff. Perfect.
We're also gonna be on there, we split up once, so you know,
Good.
All right, thank you so much.
Any communications from the commissioners? Not? How about a motion?
Move the adjourn.
Motion by Zeb, second by Danielle. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.